was your biggest week ever? Do you remember what your biggest week ever was over the phone?
Not what they are now. I think I did over 10,000 one time to qualify for a trip, and that was a big deal. And it was, a big push week we had. And so I had a couple 10,000 AP weeks.
Still big though.
And that was a big deal.
Let's kind of break that down because I think there's a lot of people listening, right, that would love to do $10,000 a week. So let's talk about the anatomy of a $10,000 a week. Okay, hypothetically, if someone wanted to go out, today's the time of recording this, it's Tuesday. It's actually before the Bucks and Cowboys game, which will probably air after, which is fine too. I'm predicting that the Cowboys beat the Bucks and upset the Bucks on week 1, but we'll see. Okay, it's Tuesday, and let's say someone wanted to do $10,000 next week. How do they set themselves up for success? And what's the anatomy of a $10,000 a week look like? Welcome back to the CA Power Players podcast, live in the marketing studio today as I hang out with my good buddy from Vero Beach, Florida. Dude's a great golfer, fantastic hair, always extremely well dressed. Not as good with baseball cards as Grant Doherty is. Please welcome back from Senior Life Services, James Whitley.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dude, thanks for being here, J-Dub.
3 years since I've been to
3 years, dude. This building,
Spring Vegas, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what Landon would say. Since we're in the marketing studio, so we got to use stuff like terms like that.
Yeah.
I thought that I was going to say this building didn't exist 3 years ago. Well, that's not totally true. The building existed. Security and marketing being in it did not.
No.
Right. So welcome back. Yeah. How's life been, man? You guys are doing. You guys are going to do over $30 million in final expense telesales in 2022.
Yes, sir.
How nuts is that?
It's pretty nuts. I mean, 13 years ago, couldn't have pictured that number. So
yeah. Well, okay, so you started out 13 years ago. When you first started out, for those who don't know James Whitley's story, trying to figure out how to sell over the phone.
Yes.
You and Grant Doherty, you didn't have Rory's like, hey, figure this out, right? Or something of that nature. What was that?
Yeah, he's been in the industry 45 years, but
Rory's a cool cat too.
Sold everything face to face. Yeah, and so he's an incredible mentor, taught me everything I know, but said, here's how I would sell it face to face. But I hear that people are starting to sell this over the phone. Let's figure it out. So that's what we did, and we just sat down in an office with a box of old leads and tried to figure it out.
I love it.
And the rest is history.
Without a script?
No script at the time.
Box of old leads. How old? Or like old direct mail or what?
I'm not sure they were honest with us on how old they were. Leads that had been mailed for face-to-face agents that were not in their territory, or the agent wasn't here anymore or anything. So, and they were like a prescription drug intro.
Yeah.
And so it taught me early on that, a lead truly is a name and a number. So
well, and an older direct mail lead is still good than a lot of leads too. I mean, yeah, it's not ideal, but an older direct mail lead is they still stick to the mailbox. They still put information on it.
Their signature,
yeah. Was there stings where they didn't have a phone number? Did that happen from time to time?
Yeah, I got really good at reverse phone number lookup.
So that worked. Does that still work technically? As like a random tip for somebody listening? I don't know. Does that work?
I think it still works. I mean, we still use it. People change their numbers all the time, and there's all kinds of websites and things that it's incredible. I had an agent look my stuff up, and my cell phone number's on there. I don't know how they got it. So
wow. So if you're like, hey, I want to get hold of James,
it's on the internet.
Just gave you a tip on how to do it, right? Don't even. He has an iPhone, right? You have an because he's a normal, smart human being. Okay. So you should FaceTime him. Actually find his number and FaceTime James. Maybe not too late at night or on the weekends. His wife Sam may wonder what the heck's going on, but no, you should definitely look him up. And he may even give out some details today on how you could get a hold of him and maybe work more with the Senior Life Services and learn what they're doing. Because there's a lot of agents out there, man, that they want to sell with a phone. I think a lot of you listening, you would love to do that, but they just struggle to do it. They're like, I don't have the perfect script. I don't know what to say when they want me to mail them stuff. Or I've always done face-to-face sales. And so this transition's been tough. Maybe there's a lot of agents that probably tried during COVID, tried unsuccessfully. There was a lot that tried successfully, right, that pivoted.
Yeah.
Y'all pivoted quite a bit. I mean, because you were about a 50-50 field versus phone 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, we still had a good portion of the agency, just over 50% going door to door, kitchen table sales. They were used to it. And I remember to this day, the day Rory called me and said, we got to do something. And a week later, we had everybody transitioned over, and we really didn't lose anybody and didn't miss a beat. So
it's amazing.
We were fortunate. So
yeah, and the fact that you had been doing it for so long made it simple to transition into like, okay, everybody's going to do this. And because you think about it, what did you notice about the industry for those that maybe didn't pivot, or they weren't doing it, or they were only doing field? Because now you are doing probably 99% phone.
Yep.
You were 50-50. There's some that were doing 100% field, right? And there was times where, there was states and areas where you could just get away with doing whatever you wanted. Now, that's not necessarily the case for the whole country, though, right? There's a lot of areas where a lot of companies had to pivot. What did you see from all these different companies as they had to pivot? Some of them weren't prepared. They didn't know how to pivot. They lost a bunch of agents.
Yeah, trying to figure out technology and leads.
Some probably closed their doors, possibly, depending on how long they've been in the business.
And I think I was fortunate, and I saw it at that time. Rory, when I first started 13 years ago, I said, well, let me ride along with some of the best salespeople, because let me see how they close it. And he was smart enough to say, I don't ever want you to be in an in-home presentation, so that when you're on the phone, you won't say, well, man, if I had just been in front of him. And so... Have
you ever been in an actual face-to-face appointment?
I've met some of my clients because I've sold friends and family and stuff like that, but I've never met a lead, I guess would be the thing. In 13 years, I've never met a single potential client face-to-face.
It's amazing. What would you say to the person that's like, dude, you have to start out in the field. You cannot succeed unless you start out in the field.
I feel like they're just two different beasts, and there are a lot of people, and I've met a lot, through you and 8% that can hybrid it and do both. And they'll call, and if they can't sell them, they'll drive out to their home.
I don't know if I like that, though, to be honest, right? What's your opinion on that? Truthfully, like your opinion. Nobody else's opinion matters right now but James Whitley.
I think they're seeing the guys that transitioned and some that struggled, and now they're all doing great, but is things that face-to-face are important, body language and what you say and picking up on stuff around you and different things like that. And over the phone, none of that stuff matters. I could be, making crazy faces and flicking them off over the phone and they wouldn't know it. But things that do matter, your voice inflection is a lot more important. And, I've always used the, I don't know why, but, maybe because it's a fun Christmas movie, but like in Die Hard, it's like if you took Bruce Willis out of Die Hard and just put him right here at the table with us, and he was reading the lines from Die Hard, hanging from the helicopter, doing all that stuff in the same intensity that he was doing it, you and I would be like, man, chill out. Like,
come on, Bruce.
What's going on? Like, calm down. But in the movie and in the context of things, it works. And so it's the same thing over the phone is, you've got to be, I think, more over the top than you are in person, because you would scare Mrs. Jones if you were, hey, Mrs. Jones, this is James, and you were sitting in their kitchen table. It might overwhelm them. So
right. And when you did, when you first did telesales, you didn't have a script. How did you all figure out what to say?
A lot of trial and error. I always tell people too, it's like, game tape. I guess you're going to see, you're not going to see Tom Brady, but you are going to see Tom
My wife is.
And you're going to see the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But
Bucks at Cowboys week 1.
You talk about Tom Brady or, Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or all these people, and game tape, is so important to them. And so I always tell people with telesales, in the moment, like this interview, I'm not going to realize some of the stuff I said unless I go back and watch it. And I'm going to be like, oh, why did I say that? Or why did I do this? And the same thing happened for Grant and I. We'd be sitting there trying to sell over the phone and going back and listening to a recording that we did in a presentation that we did, whether we sold him or not. And just like Tom Brady can go back and see, okay, well, my foot was in the wrong position, or I didn't do the 3-step, or I didn't rotate my hips, or I didn't do this. We were able to go back and hear obvious buying signals or obvious this or obvious that we didn't understand and pick up on. And so the things that were working, we kept using the things that didn't work. I mean, I'll never forget, I coming from finance background, all that stuff, I thought the financial strength of the company I was selling and how long they'd been in business and their S&P rating and all this stuff mattered. And, nobody cares that American Amicable has, $1 billion in reserve and all this. They don't care about that.
You would think in theory it matters, right?
It mattered to me.
Yeah.
But,
but it probably does matter to a lot of more savvy, larger investors, right? A financial advisor could probably get away with that, like you talked about, more than a mal-expense agent. That's interesting.
But the client just wants to buy me, and so that's what we learned quickly is
it's good.
The people that I go off on a tangent with and talk about, Louisiana was like my favorite state. We started mailing that early on. And the people that I would get into gumbo conversations and the people that were obsessed on Aru versus okra. And I found out it was like a religion. And so I just started asking every person to talk about that. So they get to talk about anything but insurance so that I could then transition into insurance. And we just learned that through trial and error and doing research. And, unfortunately there wasn't a Cody Askins on YouTube back in 2009, to make it easy. So
that's hilarious. What would you say to if an agent was building a script from scratch right now today, what advice would you give them on how they should think through building that over time?
It's tough. We talked about this earlier and understanding the psychology of it, but I'm a numbers guy. And so I looked at it from statistics, and obviously you got to get from point A to point B. And so many agents understand that, but it's like, driving to the airport. I'm sure in Springfield here, there's more than one way to get to the airport. Yeah. And you might have your favorite route. Lauren might have her favorite route.
And then everybody else is wrong.
You got, so you take Lauren's route. No. But,
exactly.
So that A to B point. And so we have a saying around the office where, people make fun of me for the math stuff, but as long as you're plus or minus one standard deviation, like above or below that, and you just don't get too out in left field, too often, I think too many people try and make it too robotic. So they're like, I got to read every single word verbatim to this, but you've got to be able to feel out what your client's doing and be able to. A lot of what we're scripting is just asking questions that are going to move the ball down the field, right? So since we're on this football analogy, right? It's 4 yards a carry, you win the game. Yeah. It's not big plays, but you're going to get a first down every single time. Actually, 3 yards a carry, you'd be able to.
Technically.
And so it may not be sexy, but you're just moving the ball down the field. So you don't have to throw the Hail Mary right in the beginning, but if you can just move the ball down the field and pick up little nuggets here and there, but maintain control, that's more of what we focus on more so than here's exactly what you have to say in this moment at this time. So
it's good. Yeah, it makes sense. What was your biggest week ever? Do you remember what your biggest week ever was over the phone?
Not what they are now. I think I did over 10,000 one time to qualify for a trip, and that was a big deal. And it was, a big push week we had. And so I had a couple 10,000 AP weeks.
Still big though.
And that was a big deal. Not so much anymore. Now we have people doing it every single week. So we had a young lady out of Texas who did over 10,000 for 27 consecutive weeks. You saw her in Mexico. So and she won Ultimate Challenge, and so she did 27 consecutive weeks with her worst week being 10,000.
That's insane. Let's kind of break that down because I think there's a lot of people listening, right, that would love to do $10,000 a week. So let's talk about the anatomy of a $10,000 week. Okay, hypothetically, if someone wanted to go out, today's the time of recording this. It's Tuesday. It's actually before the Bucks and Cowboys game, which will probably air after, which is fine too. I'm predicting that the Cowboys beat the Bucks and upset the Bucks on week 1, but we'll see. Okay, it's Tuesday, and let's say someone wanted to do $10,000 next week. How do they set themselves up for success? And what's the anatomy of a $10,000 week look like?
Obviously, there's more than one way to be successful in this industry. We acknowledge it all the time, and I've got a lot of friends, or we have a lot of friends that do it different ways. For our structure and stuff, we talk a lot about the mindset, making sure that you get prepared for the week. It's like we're both driven, talk about doing stuff outside insurance. And it's like, if somebody just says, hey, I'm going to go make $1 million, it's like, well, great. Everybody wants to do that. But okay, now what are the plans to do it? And you and I are similar, where I write that stuff down every morning. So, I do the 5 a.m. club, still do it. Did it this morning at
awesome.
4 a.m.
That's right. Yeah, because you're in Central Time.
Yeah. And,
that's early. And you didn't get in until after midnight.
Yeah, I got into the room at like 1.
Jeez.
And sleep when I'm dead.
Like 2.5 hours of sleep. Did you go back to sleep?
No.
I
can't.
You probably can't, yeah.
No.
That's unbelievable, dude. That's nuts. You guys are complaining about getting 6 hours of sleep. Goodness gracious, 7
But
hours.
I want to stick to that routine, and I want to be consistent. And if I'm not doing it, then I can't expect agents to do it.
Yes.
And so I put the 5 a.m. club video out, and we talk every single day in that about, aspiring to be better and doing these things. And so writing down your goals, not just for the day, but for the month and for the year. So every single day it's understanding that. And so I'm a big understand your numbers person. And so I'm probably dating myself when I say this, but we have something called a TPS report, which is just my homage to a great movie, but
Office Space.
But Office Space, yeah. but in the TPS report, I had it. This is how I've been doing it. We didn't have CRM, so I had no data. So I had to track everything with what do I do? The 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I cross it out for 5. It was fun.
Yeah.
And so T stood for talk to. How many people did I talk to? P stood for presentations. S stood for sales.
It's pretty simple.
And then I had a couple formulas, and obviously if you had dials, I used to move paper clips from one cup to the other to get my dials. And so if you do that, we talk about statistics and averages again, right? It's like flipping a quarter. So many people in telesales are like, well,
yes,
I made 100 calls and I didn't make a sale. And it's like, okay, if I told you, Cody, if you flip a quarter 10 times, statistically, they say it should be tails 5 times, but it'll probably never happen. Very rarely. Most of the time, like you might flip it heads 10 straight times. But if you flip it 1,000 times, 10,000 times, by the end of 10,000 times, it's going to be almost 50-50.
Wow.
And so same thing there, as I often talk about, okay, I need 3 months worth of data, ideally, but you could do it with a week's worth of data.
Sure.
To back out, okay, how many presentations did it take to get a sale? Right? So let's say you close 25% of your presentations. So that means every 4 presentations you're going to get a sale. How many people do I have to talk to get a sale?
Yep.
And then how many dials does it take to get somebody to answer the phone? And so then we can back out, if my goal is 10,000 AP and I know my average sale, let's say, is 800 AP, now we have a formula for 10,000, which is coming into next week, you have to be prepared, at least on the telesales side. You're not having to do appointment setting, all this stuff. You have to be prepared to do, okay, if I need to make 142 dials a day, let me set myself up, because we're talking about flipping a quarter, so we got to do more. So let me set myself up to do at least 150. I'll break it out into 5 days. Saturday will be that, okay, I'm not quite to 10 yet. And now that's how somebody can do it every single week consistently, because they know their numbers and they know over the course of the long haul you're going to have that, and you're going to have your pipeline full. Not every call is going to be a 1-call close.
Yeah. 10K. Let's just call it 12 cells. Say it's 833 or whatever, right? 12 cells. Could be 12 and a half, 13. But 12 cells. Sells to presentations. You're thinking, what would you say it is at y'all's company? Like, okay, if they do 24 presentations, they're going to get 12 cells, or some of them are going to be doubles, so it's kind of convoluted. Do you think, like, what do you
it's
think?
Tough. I hate putting that number out there, because then people compare themselves to that, and so it's all about knowing your number.
Yes.
And so,
what do you think a conservative average would be across the end? Like, someone listening could definitely do like 36 presentations, 12 cells, better.
Yeah, I mean, and everyone. So here's the other thing: everyone's definition of what a presentation is
That's
different.
Also true.
And so part of it was
some people. It's like, hey, if you make it
myself.
5 minutes, the presentation. Well, maybe not though.
And so for me, talk to was different than presentation. So presentation wasn't, if I didn't get to ask for the sale, it wasn't a presentation. And so, but then some people just say like, hey, you interested in some insurance? And that's a presentation. Yeah. And so everyone's definition of different. I just need to know, what your numbers are. And so what's cool with technology now and CRMs is you can really gamify it, and you can break it down to dollars per dial. So you can say, here's your AP, or here's the income that you're going to generate every time you dial a number. that now makes it fun, right? Because it doesn't matter if they don't answer, they
Yeah.
answer and hang up on you, they answer in cursive, like you're just like, boom, here's another $5.17 or whatever, and you can
That's
kind of count it out in your head. And then on a day where you get beat up, you can go home and still mentally say, well, I still made this much, because every no is
Yes.
going to get you closer to a yes. And that's the
Yes.
hardest part about telesales. It's a grind. So
It is. I mean, so let's use what? Can we use 24 as a general example? I know it's not gonna be perfect and it's not exact,
Sure.
but so 24 presentations, and talk to how many to give 24 presentations. You think 100? And again,
yeah, I was going to say about 4 people talking to
Okay.
the presentation. That makes sense.
and then dials to talk to.
Again, definition of talk to is different, right?
Yeah.
If a kid answers the phone or whatever, but I always say, somewhere, I mean, we can be conservative, let's say 600.
Okay, so if that's the case, you need dial about 100 times, 120 times a day in that example, right? But also you can take 10,000 and divide it by the 600, and you're making $16.67 every time you pick up the phone, when someone else is making $16.67 to flip a burger.
Right.
And they can flip a lot more. That you can make a lot more dials than they can flip burgers too.
And no matter how many burgers, and we use that analogy all the time, no matter how many burgers you flip in the hour,
That's what you make.
you don't make any more.
Yeah.
But yet you come
That's
here and we tell you can dial as much as you want, and every time you dial, you make money, and there's this mental block that stops somebody from doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because some people are like, well, dude, I can't sell $10,000. Are you flipping kidding me? They got somebody that's done it 27 weeks in a row, and she's probably not the greatest salesperson on the planet.
She'd been doing it for close to 10 years, and she was a field agent that had moved over, and she just had some circumstances change in her life that said, I got to make some money now. I want to make some changes. And so in the short term, I'm going to make some sacrifices, time, and commit to doing this, because if I do $10,000 every single week, A, I'm going to win this contest in 6 months, and then B, the commission checks are going to come off of that are going to be a lot bigger. Now the renewals are going to be a lot bigger, and that was what our goal was. So you got to be intentional about what you want and why you want it. So
Yeah. You think it's far too many people just don't know what they want, or how they're going to get it?
Yes. I make it a point anytime I'm working directly with somebody to, before we even get them on the phone, sit down and figure out what the goals are. Because if you're coming from fast food,
Which you'll have some.
Yep. And so that's an example, and you know her well, and
KFC to 6-figure earner.
right. And so
How cool
you
is
come
that?
from frying chicken, and the most you've ever made, I think it was like $24,000 that she'd made.
Wow.
$40,000 is a huge raise.
Yeah.
I wanted
40% increase.
I wanted 6 figures for her, but our goals had to align, and so it took a little bit of time to be the $40,000 a year earner, used to living off $24,000, before she came back and said, okay, like I bought a purse, I bought new clothes, I bought this and that, but now I don't want to rent anymore. I want to buy a house. Now I
Correct.
don't want this old car. I want a new car. Now I want to do things for my family, but it takes some time. Henry Stewart says all the time, right? He says there's levels to these bezels, and sometimes, and that's a watch reference. And so for people that like watches, you buy your first, Cody likes nice things, right? You buy your first Rolex, and maybe it's just like your standard Sommaire or something like that. And now all of a sudden you want, the presidential, and you want this and you want that, but you don't know until you get your first one. And so he uses that analogy a lot for, she didn't even know what 6 figures could do for her.
Yeah.
But she had to make 40 first, and her and I had to constantly have communications because if I was just saying work harder, sell more, do this, why? There's no goal aligned there. But then all of a sudden she wanted to buy a house, she wanted to buy a car. She's accomplished all those things, started her own business, all that. Yeah. Now 6 figures is nothing, and she wants to keep taking it to the next level. So you gotta be on the same page when people are setting their goals.
Yes. Plus, when you're making 24, 40 is amazing, and 100 feels like flipping impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like it feels so far away. Like probably somebody listening right now, or it just feels so far away. And everything is so far away. You making your first whatever, was so far away. And then the money you made now felt so far away, the money you're going to make in the future. It's interesting too, though, how much of it is like us governing our own potential and limiting the possibilities of our own life, of just the way that we think overall.
Yeah.
Maybe but also surroundings, way you were raised, starts to play into what you think is expected, or what you think you should have, or what you think you should end up with.
That's how I was raised. I mean, it was go to college, which I did. Mm-hmm. Graduate.
Go Gators.
Get a good job. Go Gators. And then work at a good company for 30 years, work your way up the corporate ladder, so on and so forth. And I was fortunate that I graduated in 2008. In hindsight, I was fortunate because the recession came full swing, finance major. And I had that conversation with myself when Rory and I talked to each other. And, he offered me the opportunity to where he said, you got to look at that stuff. And I realized, like, my dad had done that. And I love my dad to death, and my dad is the biggest influence in my life. But I didn't want to end up like him, because working hard for forever didn't do anything for him.
Right.
And so, it took getting outside of what education had taught me, to get to that point. But to your point on that, my only goal at that time was just to get out of debt. I didn't know anything else. And so, again, goes back to what are those goals and where are you trying to get to? And, we have a saying at our office all the time, there's, a why that makes you try and a why that makes you cry. And the why that makes me try is, obviously, I would like to not worry about how my bills are going to get paid. Mm-hmm. And although I don't know anything about fast cars and all that stuff, and that stuff doesn't entertain me. I like real estate and I like to do all this stuff. But then the why that made me cry was what drove me more, and that was, at the time, paying back my parents for everything that they had done. And so, 4 years ago, I was able to retire my mom, who was working at the hospital, had a pacemaker, all this stuff, and I wanted her to have a better life. And so I bought them a house and moved them down to Vero, and I'm able to take care of them.
That's cool.
And then, now short term, it's been my wife and her health issues, and that's what makes me, and I got kids, and all that stuff is what drives me. As well as, our agent success and those stories that we talk about all the time. So
correct. If an agent's struggling and they're like trying to find a home, they're not totally happy where they're at. They're like struggling to find the right fit for them, because there's a lot of places that'll help you, a lot of places that won't help you, a lot of agents that are in the business, a lot of agents that are doing it part-time, et cetera, a lot of agents that have quit and came back. What advice would you give to somebody that's like trying to find an actual home for them?
There are a lot of incredible people in this industry. There are also a lot of really bad people in this industry, and I credit Cody. I had a lot of experiences with bad people in this industry, and so when Cody and I met, I was like, I don't want to meet anyone else in this industry. And I've met a lot of great people, and so I always tell everyone, and I think you hear this a lot right now, is you've got to find the right mentor. It's not so much the organization. Obviously, I'm partial to the fact that I think our organization is full entirely of good mentors, and you will get that no matter what, and that's what our culture is.
I've seen that to be true, by the way. I really have.
We're small comparatively, at least as body count goes, to a lot of places. Sure. And so
but you help agents like very intimately.
Right.
You're providing and helping them with a ton of like quality lead sources. There's a lot more one-on-one help. And you can, maybe small body count, but a large amount of premium,
No, and you'll find that at other organizations too. So I say you can find that, but you've got to find somebody that is going to invest as much time and energy into you as you're investing back into the opportunity. And so, if no one's there to help you, when you're brand new or you're struggling, what we pride ourselves on is you're not on the phone alone. We've got the technology where somebody's sitting shotgun with you, listening to your presentation, telling you what to say, even jumping in and helping you close it, and you don't owe them a penny. And that's what you need. And so we'll teach you the underwriting. We'll answer all your questions. We'll help you close the sales. I tell agents all the time, tell me what you need to accomplish. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what it takes to get there. And if I say do X, Y, and Z, and you do it, I will not let you fail. Like I put my own financial, I've told people, like, if this is how much you need to make, do this. And if you don't do it, if you don't make it, I'll personally make up the difference. And I learned that from Rory, because that's what Rory told me. He says, if you do this and you don't make this, then I'll personally make the difference up. And he's never had to give me a cent out of his pocket. And I've never had to give an agent a cent out, because that's how confident we are in what we do. And so if you don't find somebody that can believe in you that much, that's oftentimes a problem, because I'm more of an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneur is the sexy word. You're an entrepreneur. Start your own companies. I'm an intrapreneur. I found a company that I could plug into, and then I could build my own something inside of that. Correct. And I wouldn't be nearly where I am today if I didn't have that support and everything around. And most agents out there are more like me than they are like you.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. If they want to learn more about you, James Whitley, and also the company, Senior Life Services, what do they do? Where do they go? How does that work?
I'm on Facebook, James Whitley. I'm on Instagram, James Whitley. Apparently I'm getting old, because I'm not on TikTok with the kids these days.
All right. He is getting old, isn't he?
But I'm on both those platforms, and I may not post a lot, but I respond to people all the time, and I'm in all the groups with people and stuff. So
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing the anatomy of a $10,000 a week, the company, all the success you've had, and thanks for sharing some telesales tips today for agents all around the world. Appreciate you, bro.
Thank you, and thank you for being you.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for listening to the Power Players podcast. Can't promise the next guest will be as cool as James, but either way, we'll see you on the next. Hey, if you enjoyed this, I got another one you're going to love. It's right there. Click on it. See you in there. So I got 3 key questions for you as we kick this thing off right now. Number 1, what is it that you really want? What keeps you up at night? I'm going to read a text.